All right, Ian. We dropped the bombs on some people at the last podcast. The Intellivision Amico Shills, and the responses ran the gamut, and they were not surprising. We won't get into the individual responses. Obviously, some people were flailing and pathetic, but some people try to rebrand their YouTube channel.
That's the funniest.
That's the funniest one. But the one person, the author Brett Weiss, I want to focus on because it seemed like Brett took this almost more personally than even the other folks, because obviously we both are producers of video game books, and so we're in the same sort of space here. And just want to address some of the things because Brett wrote a long blog post that recounted strangely almost every personal interaction we had ever had on the phone and in person, really, and Facebook interactions with screenshots. And so
it's extremely long.
It's very long. It's very weird. And so looking at that on its surface, I'm glad I cut communication off with someone like that who was literally tracking every single interaction we had, not to my knowledge. You don't want to be involved with people like that because this is the potential result. If they're going to bring up direct messages and try to recount every single convention interaction ever had, I feel like my decision was good not to communicate with this person at some point. I feel like because anything I said could be used against me. And that's before we get into who this person associates.
Yeah, it wasn't
with.
Just like a mention. It was like,
no.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
no. So I want to go through some of this, what Brett was upset about. But Brett was basically upset about that we lumped it in with the other shills. And on Facebook, he replied on Facebook, and I had a long response that was somehow deleted. I don't know if you can delete a response. Whatever. It's fine. But Brett claimed that he wasn't...
Might be able to hide it or whatever.
Sure, it was weird. But Brett claimed that he wasn't a shill because he didn't receive any money. And we went back and forth. The classic definition of shill... You know what? I'm just going to let a random person tell the definition of a shill right here.
I'm looking at the definition of shill, an accomplice of a swindler who acts as an enthusiastic customer to entice or encourage others.
So on that count, I think by the letter of the definition, would you agree that Brett acted as a shill?
Well, like I said all the way back when I first used the word shill in relation to the Amico, and everyone flipped out about it. There's no yes, all of those people were. It doesn't require money. You're an accomplice
to a swindler, and Tommy's been shown to be a swindler. Whether or not you knew he was a swindler is immaterial. He was a swindler, right. And you did his dirty work. And you even called yourself a shill, wore the t-shirts, and you said multiple times, I am friends with Tommy Tallarico, which we'll get into later. Oh, I forgot about the theme song that Ian has to listen to.
People, you better beware. People, you better prepare. If you come at him, he just might clap back. It's Petty Pat.
Here we are. There you go. That was almost like the prologue to the intro. You like my jingle?
It was fine.
Yeah, it was fine.
It was fine.
Your brother might like it more.
My brother might like it more. I enjoyed the layering.
Oh, okay.
Layering was nice.
I do a pretty good jingle. So anyway, I thought that was it was strange that someone would bring up all these details of communication, noting phone conversations, noting convention interactions, but not. Maybe not remembering every single one of them. Maybe omitting things either because they remembered it and realized it was embarrassing, or maybe they just forgot. Maybe they just forgot about some of these interactions. So the fact of the matter is this.
Maybe.
My distrust of Brett Weiss started back when one of our phone conversations happened. By the way, Brett's had my phone number for years, by the way. He left that out. Brett says I blocked and everything. Brett, you've had my phone number for years, buddy. You could have reached me whenever. I'm just telling you. When Brett used to ask me when we were producing the NES book, for example, where do you get your screenshots from? I said, well, a chunk came from Moby Games. I got permission from them. They actually gave me permission. They said, thank you. Almost no one asked permission for stuff like that. And obviously captured some. Oh, where do you get your game cart scans from? Oh, they came from Nintendo Age. Dane asked Dane permission. He sent me like the dump of it, and that became the artwork. We used the labels and made our own artwork. Oliver did a great job on the original artwork, Oliver Arcee. So he would ask me these things, and I thought it was innocent, like, hey, I just want to know the process. Brett never told me at the time that he was planning to do a Super Nintendo book at the time. And not like Brett was obligated to legally, but the fact of the matter is Brett knew I was going to eventually do a Super Nintendo book. And Brett gleaned information off of me in order to do the future book, because his Super Nintendo book and NES book use Moby game screenshots, for example.
Well, I think that's the part of it that bothers me the most, though, is that he thought that he tried to pitch the narrative that you were inspired by his Super Nintendo book.
Well, he thought I was inspired by everything, according to his words. So according to Brett, to get into that, Brett tried to, this was a DM he sent me. You want to talk about this DM he sent me? He sent me this. We're going to go over DMs. It's all fair game, Brett. You want to post DMs. This is from 2018. So this is when my Super Nintendo book is well on its way. It's coming out the next year. His had already come out by then, by the way. His are split into 2 volumes, volume 1 and volume 2, just because his publisher thought they can make more money by charging more for less information, but whatever. He said, "Hi, Pat. The talk of Pat is copying Brett has reared its ugly head. I've never heard of anyone accusing me of copying him, by the way, ever. I don't know if you never, no, by the way. But I'm trying to squelch that. Here's a quote from a guy on the Texas Retro Gamer Society group. I could care less about what people are saying to me on a Facebook group, by the way. What do you think about Pat the NES punk copying your idea and pretending like your book doesn't exist?" And here, Brett says, "Here was my response. Good question, Michael. I don't think Pat copied my idea exactly, but he has probably been influenced by my work as a professional video game writer for more than 20 years. I wrote the world's first comprehensive guidebooks to such consoles as the ColecoVision, Intellivision, Nintendo, etc. And back in 2010, Pat talked to me at Screw Attack Game Convention about my NES book, which came out in 2009. He's not referring to it. He had a console guidebook. It wasn't a specific NES book. It covered a swath of consoles, by the way. Was it an NES book, by the way? He told me that he was considering doing an NES book on his own. I might have said that in 2010. I don't remember. The success of his NES book, for which I wrote more than 50 reviews and reflections for, led him to wanting to do an SNES book. Like I said, he was probably influenced by my work without really copying it, just as I was influenced by Leonard Herman's ABC to the VCS book without copying it. As far as Pat acting like my book doesn't exist, that's pretty common among competitors. Fortunately, Pat and I are friends, and the competition is a friendly one." So Brett was trying to put online this notion that I was influenced by his work, which is absolutely false. Right. His book, if you've ever seen his console guide, totally black and white.
They're very, very different.
Very short descriptions of games. We're talking 25 words in some cases, very short, 30 words, not reviews. This book, which I'll hold up, this is full color. Full color. Screenshots for every game. Pictures of every game. Full reviews. Again, full reviews. This had not been done before. When this book was released. That's why this book was successful, partially because of that. So it's sort of insulting when I see that, because it dismisses my sort of effort that I could have come up with these ideas by myself. And it's sort of like seeing any other topic and being like, well, because it previously exists, I was inspired by it. That's not the case at all. It's just sort of weird to try to throw it out there. So I thought at this point that there was something weird going on here. That there was some narrative that was trying to be portrayed online by Brett that I was like, I don't know if this is something I want to be around. I'll to be totally honest. There's something weird going on here. Yeah. I don't know what your takeaway of that is, but there's something weird happening here.
I'm sorry. I'm refreshing myself on the next portion of this, which is the DM from our friend.
We'll get that in a second. So Brett, along the way, he left this out in his blog post. Brett begged to be on my podcast twice. The Not So Common Podcast.
Not So Common.
Do you know the name of my podcast, Ian? The Not So Common Podcast.
I didn't know if it was mostly common, not so common. There's a lot of words here.
Yeah, so he begged twice, and he said, yeah, can I come on and talk about the books? And I said, well, Brett, that would be weird. I've opened up my audience, and I'm doing my own books. And unlike your books, Brett, I invest my own money into my books and tons of time in terms of Like the N64.
We don't have to be book enemies, but no one is going. Coke is not going to invite Pepsi over to give a speech at the Christmas party.
But it's like my books have a risk. Brett is paid up front, has a publisher. There's no risk involved at all for that stuff. So it doesn't make any sense. Then he said to me, Ian, well, I don't have to talk about the books. So then some people then would wonder, hey, Brett, you're on Pat's podcast, but why could you bring up the books? He'd say, oh, Pat wouldn't allow me to. So it's a lose-lose. Why the hell would I do that?
Sure.
It doesn't make any sense. That's just natural. That's not me being an asshole. No,
that's pretty much human interaction.
That's just how it works. It's like, if you want to do your book, good luck to you. I don't care. It's a separate product, like you said. But to spin this weird narrative in the writing that I was jealous of Brett doing a Super Nintendo book when I was planning my own.
Well, it's weird because it's not like it would make sense if you've done a Nintendo book and it does well. The very obvious next step is you do a Super Nintendo book.
The NES book.
These ideas occur naturally in the wild.
I had no idea how well the NES book would do. When I launched the Kickstarter. Remember, it was the NES Marathon, 2015, and it broke $20,000 in an hour. And I was like, "Hey, Ducky," I was like, "This is something." So anyway, the jealousy thing is weird. And I wish Brett had done his research. And now I feel bad because
Stop balancing the duck.
I love the duck. Brett's argument is that I took out his writing only because of the Super Nintendo book. When we said in the podcast, his writing came out, part of it, before the first print. The second print, Brett, again, I'll repeat this, I had to go back into print because it sold out nearly immediately on Amazon Thanksgiving weekend.
I do not remember any drama between you two when you pulled the first ones out. They were just rewritten because they weren't very good.
Yes, and the second one. So this is why I didn't want to say the first time, because I feel bad for the two other authors who were also rewritten out of the third print, Brett. It wasn't just you, buddy. It wasn't just you. That kind of defeats your argument a little bit there.
Lots of people got stuff. I mean, there was a lot of changes between.
There was a lot of changes, and people. I saw someone say something really dumb about, well, why didn't you like recall the first print of the book? You don't recall books. Like
people
that's not how books
do that.
work.
That's not how it
This
works.
isn't a toaster oven with bad wiring that burns your house down. This isn't an airbag that can decapitate you. That's just fucking silly and dumb. I'll just say that to the person who said that. And I know who said that, by the way. It's kind of weird that I have to go through this now because of this weird narrative he's trying to pay me to be being some sort of evil businessman, where to me, I'm just protecting you, Brett, because I never said publicly, I rewrote your shit. I never said that in all these years. Never said that. I did to say, yes, for the third print run, we rewrote about 60, which included yours and other writers as well. Sorry, Brett. That's the way it works. You were paid for everything. You were paid for writing that never ended up in the fucking book. Again, to repeat that. And so he brought up the fact that I said that he didn't like the fact that I took shots at him for not paying his writers. He calls them just contributors, even though they write a majority of his books. I have his book I bought used because there are a ton of used ones online. I wonder why. This is the NES Omnibus Volume 1 because they're broken up into two books. Here you go, advertising for your book, Brett. For example, look at Jaws. This is totally random. This is Jaws, Ian. Brett's writing is here. 1.5 columns. Then he has 2 columns of quotes. Insider insights. This was a non-paid contributor writing an entire page, writing 3 or 4 times what Brett wrote for his review. They wrote your book, Brett. You don't have a book without them. That's why it's kind of insulting you didn't pay them.
Yes, I find that very insulting.
It's not like they contributed 20% to your book, 15%, and it's, oh, cool, I want to see my book in Barnes & Noble. You wrote in your blog. You don't have books without your contributors. I don't either, Brett. The point is, I pay my writers. I show them the proper respect when it comes to this. That bothers me as a writer. It should bother you too. And if your argument is going to be that your publisher doesn't want to pay them, don't do your fucking book then. Or do a book without your contributors. I'm sorry I'm cursing.
Do some work on it.
Put more work in when it comes to that. So here's the weird thing, Ian. We both have a friend, Antoinette.
Yes, we do.
Antoinette actually contributed to the Super Nintendo omnibus that Brett did. I was fine. Oh, cool. You want to write? That's fine. I ribbed her a little bit. Antoinette's a great artist. She's been a friend for several years.
Super good artist. Very nice. Always takes care of us at conventions.
Yeah, she's a peach. She's team sushi. We go to sushi buffets. So she told me, but way before this event happened that Ian was witness to, that the contributors, the writers of your book.
I can't recall if I was witness to this. I always was thinking, I think I might have been thinking about the Portland thing.
Which you can bring up later. But the writers weren't even given digital copies of the book originally before it came out.
Yeah,
That's
even
what
digital.
Not digital. But they also, Brett, which you didn't put in your little blog post, they didn't get physical copies of the book. You couldn't put out for a physical copy of a book a $40 or $80 because it's two different books. You couldn't do that. You couldn't ask your publisher to do that. And again, if you say it costs money, then don't use contributors that aren't paid. That's an ethical thing to me. That bothers me.
Yeah.
That's bothersome.
You're making money off of their work, yet you can't provide a physical copy of the book. And instead you basically say books are expensive, guys.
You want to say what you want to run down her thread, our friend Antoinette?
I mean, so basically, do you want to if you want to read the whole thing,
I'll read it.
Okay.
Antoinette found out about the blog post that Brett did against me, and she was not happy.
No.
Because she has her own personal experiences with Brett at conventions. And so she wrote this.
It's a good read.
Story time about the time I wrote for a retro video game omnibus by a person who I will not name directly, but for reference, the name rhymes with Wet Rice, which is brilliant. I know Wet Rice through the retro game scene, not a friend, but a familiar face and someone that travels in the same circles within the scene. I met Wet many times. This is important later. Anyway, Wet Rice was beginning work on his next set of books and put an open call out on Facebook for writers. This was a no-pay gig, but it was for a friend of friends, so I figured why not? So I reached out to Wet, and he supplied the list of games still available to write a blurb on. These were not reviews as much as they were little slice of life experiences with these games. A little weird for a reference omnibus, but I appreciated the different approach to the subject. I wrote a couple of blurbs, I think for Race Driving and Timon and Pumbaa's Jungle Games, sent them off, made some requested revisions, and didn't think much more of it. And while after writing, I received the message that no writers would receive comp copies of the book, free copies. Again, a little weird, but whatever. Other writers pretty quickly became upset about this, and the response went from Wet essentially boiled down to, you should just be excited your writing is in a book being at Barnes & Noble, and simultaneously, books are expensive to make, guys. I was privy to a Facebook group of that happening where he asked writers to promote his book, and the writer said...
Oh, that's next.
Sure. But the writers at the time of this Facebook chat said, you want us to promote your book when we didn't receive a copy. There was a private message I remember seeing. Someone sent me that. Much later, a message was received from Wet, which referenced a certain NES Punks book and put forth a Wet versus Pat narrative. This message incentivized reviewing and spreading the word about the books we wrote for an exchange for PDF copies of the book. So I forgot about this. And this screenshot goes against everything about, oh, we should coexist. This isn't a competition. Pat's jealous. So no PDFs were sent originally until my Super Nintendo book was on the way in 2019. Brett sent this out to the group. As many of you know, popular YouTuber is self-publishing a Super Nintendo book this summer. It was out that fall. As such, I'm making a final marketing campaign for the SNES Omnibus books before his book comes out. I've never did a marketing campaign when a competitor's book was coming out. Never asked my contributors to do a push marketing when a contributor's coming out. His books were already out. Super Nintendo book came out a year before. Volume 1, Volume 2 came out months before. There was no reason to do this at all. At all.
Sure.
This is the jealousy thing that's being pushed.
Well, again, I think my bigger problem here is that he tries to incentivize it. And
to give him a free digital copy by marketing.
To get even a digital fucking copy of the book they contributed to. Something with an infinite supply that doesn't need to be printed, that isn't going to cost Wet Rice any money.
Yes.
That's the exchange. That's slimy.
So going
slimy.
Going back to Antoinette's thread here. This because okay, the message incentivized reviewing and spreading the word about the books we wrote for in exchange for PDF copies of the books. This would be considered a bold move, Cotton. We already knew we weren't getting paid, but for a writer to dangle exposure bucks in front of the actual writers of his book, your writers, Brett, not your contributors, refuse to even let these writers see their own work without paying, blowing smoke, and to simultaneously complain about the cost of being a writer. Great choice. Love that. I should also mention that at some point, Wet begged people for positive reviews in response to a single one-star review, which mentioned the physical quality of the book. I have never asked a writer, anyone else, to write positive reviews of the book. That's scummy as hell. More smoke blowing. Anyway, let's fast forward to the next Too Many Games after the release of this book. This would have been in 2018. Ian was there at the event. I was watching a friend's table while he was at a panel, maybe me, and who should stroll by but Wet with copies of his book in hand. I thought that maybe he would show me my work in the damn book since I didn't fluff him to get a copy. Remember when I said me already knowing Wet would be important? Wet proceeded to introduce himself to me and try to sell me the book that I wrote for. I reminded Wet that not only did we know each other, but that I wrote for said book. Wet looked me dead in the eye and said, "Oh," and walked away. He made the 180 from Wet, overly friendly book salesman, to Wet, Carl salesman, if you said you had bad credit in a split second, to Jet. Moral here, don't be a Wet. Appreciate the people that do work for you. It's one thing not to offer copies to your writers. It's a whole other thing to walk up to one of your writers and try to sell them the book that they wrote for, and then just walk away without acknowledging that you didn't recognize them. It happens. Appearances change, and sometimes you don't recognize someone you know. Don't just say, "Oh," and just dot her off when you realize you aren't making a sale, though. Before I end, let me apologize for my terrible formatting. I rarely use Twitter, blah, 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 blah. We love you. Also, let me be clear. When I say be appreciative, a sincere thank you can suffice. What did thank people for the work via Facebook message. However, this thank you was undermined by the request for positive reviews and free advertising in the same message as this. Thank you. Did not recognizing me and trying to sell me the book was just icing on the unappreciated cake. It made it abundantly clear that the initial call for writers was a blind cattle call.
So I have not a whole lot of experiences with him, but one of my experiences and something I took away was he was very weird about trying to sell that book. Because I was at a Portland retro gaming. It was one of the years where it was like one of the first years where you had a booth.
18 or 17.
And I was still in the YouTube area with like Norm and some other folks. And yeah, he came over and was like, "Hey guys, I've got this book. Do you want to buy this book? It's a guidebook." And I'm like, "No." And then he's like, "Norm, you want to buy this book?" It was just real like door-to-door salesman stuff. It was very just strange.
Not caring who you were. You're both friends of mine. It would be really fucking weird.
Yeah, it was strange. It was very strange. So, and he was aware of who we were. He said our names, but
it didn't cross his mind.
It just, like I said, it's a weird way to sell something. It would be like if you grabbed your DVDs and went around and started begging people to buy your DVDs.
Sure. I mean, I try to wholesale my book at events, but that's a wholesale. I don't go door to door to sell my the individual copies, but to dealers, I do that.
Well, sure. We're not dealers.
Yes. I try to say, "Hey, you want to buy 10 of my books, 12 of them for your store." Anyway, so just a couple more things. I won't get into the really weird, embarrassing story where he embarrassed himself in front of one of my big YouTube friends at an event trying to sell the book. I'll leave that be, Brett. I'm going to show you a little bit of mercy, but I can bring it up if need be. I'm not firing off all my bullets right now. So the other thing I want to talk about is this. This is more of a human interaction condition thing. It's a little warm in here, by the way. When you associate with people that attack other people, how do you think we're going to respond? Brett has said numerous times publicly he's friends with Tommy Tallarico, a man who has come after us, tried to hurt us professionally, made fun of Ian's medical conditions, made fun of our personal appearances. And for you to think that you can just be friendly to us, like none of that matters, I'm sorry, maybe I'm a lesser person for that. It's hard for me to look past those things. It's hard for me for you to think it's okay to associate with someone who's now a known swindler, which makes you a shill. It's harder and harder for me to let these things go because this affects us. It might be like, well, who cares what Tommy Tallarico says? But it's insulting to try to swallow that, at least to me. I don't know about you.
Sure.
It gets insulting.
Yeah, it does. It's tough. It's tough to take you seriously if you're regularly chatting. Having someone as an acquaintance that you maybe say hi to every once in a while, whatever. But I mean, you were best buds with Tommy.
Yeah, you're best buds. And you know what, Ian? It's getting warm here. I should probably take. You think I should take this off?
You should take it off.
Oh man. I even turn the heat off here. Let me just stretch a little bit for everyone here. Brett, buddy, you're friends with Jeff Tarzia, Smash JT. You did a video with him. I know you two talk. And you did a video with him after he publicly called me a fraud and called us CU Fraudcast. Oh, his video attacking Ian's medical issues would come a little bit later. So the point is this, Brett, and for everyone else out there, watch who the hell you associate with. We're not going to be cool, at least me. I'm not going to be cool with you if you're friends with someone that attacks us. That's just not how this is going to go.
No, that would be stupid.
And if you don't understand that, you're going to have to take some social interaction training course. It's disgusting. It's disappointing that I have to make these things clear to people. Don't associate with scumbags that attack us.
I mean, that's kind of like the number one rule in life is just don't associate with scumbags.
Yes.
There are too many people. This is what it comes down to, I think. And it's the case with Brett. Too many people look at my enemies. Too many people think my enemies' enemies are my friends.
Sure.
And that gets you into horrible situations. Because just because you got one rallying point doesn't mean that, everyone's a good person, or you can't do that. And that's literally, I think, how so much of that group of people kind of congealed.
Sure.
Is because it's a my enemies' enemies are my friends sort of thing. And yeah.
That's it. Watch who you're friends with. Watch who you associate with. One more thing. I almost forgot. This was brought to my attention in a great YouTube review.
Oh.
A great YouTube review. I want to get the name of the channel right. It was Jonathan. Is it VG Maps on YouTube? Yes, VG Maps on YouTube. Jonathan reviewed every NES book on the market. There's like 3 or 4. Guess which one won his best of show? Take a guess. Wasn't this one, by the way. But he pointed out an error in here, which is hysterical because it kind of goes to show some of the care that goes into this stuff. But also something that I should have been probably apologized for happening. If you look at it's on a review, the write-up of Blackjack. I'll have to do an inset. Ian, you want to look at what's on the left side of that page of Blackjack there? Is it box art or something?
Oh, yeah, that's the box art of Blackjack from your video on Blackjack with your face on the box.
My face is in a competitor's NES book. I did this Photoshop job for Casino Calamity, which came out early 2010, where I reviewed all the casino games with my pal AJ. Brett knew about this at that point. Brett never reached out, never apologized to me. So was this a rib at me? Was this an honest mistake? Was this malicious? Either way, I feel like I should have been contacted and be like, hey,
I feel like it was, I mean, honestly, I feel like it was just they grabbed the wrong box art and were lazy and didn't recognize it.
Either way, I think an apology should be in order. A little bit.
I don't even know if it's an apology. I just feel like an acknowledgement.
My stupid face is in your book forever, Brett. I just think it's funny as hell. I mean, honestly, if I really wanted to, I can make a thing of this because it's like you're using my likeness without my permission. But like, it's an honest error. But like, I don't know if you're going to do a second print run of these to get my face out of there. But that speaks to what the quality right there. That's all. It's fucking silly. My stupid fucking face in the book. When I found out, I laughed for like a minute and a half.
Oh yeah, no, I thought it was hilarious.
Antoinette laughed forever.
I thought it was hilarious. She's still laughing to this day.
People, you better beware. People, you better prepare. If you come at him, he just might clap back. It's Petty Pat.